Hello and welcome to this video about why Warlords of Draenor garrisons were bad. Dante, Warlord's been out over a year now, we've all got us garrisons, we've done that thing, we've been on assaults, we've got it on assaults, we've had minerals more than we can count, we've had herbs more than we can pot. Why are you making this video now? Well, it's a very good question and there are two reasons really. One is that we had patch 6.2.3 about a month ago now, and realistically that looks like the last big patch that we're going to have for Warlords of Draenor, and even that wasn't particularly big. It added Valor, added some more time walking, and while I do expect more time walking dungeons to come out in the new year, I would be very surprised if we get any new content. The next major thing I see is the Legion pre-patch that we're going to be looking at in the middle of next summer, maybe towards autumn time, depending on when they actually release Legion. As of yet, it's looking about September. The second reason is something that happened to me this morning when I was playing my monk. Now, I almost exclusively play melee classes. That's just because how I enjoy the game. I like to be in the front rank. It feels more natural to me. I have tried casters and I have a few hunters and things, but most of the time I'll sit at the back and I don't really feel like I'm in the game. And that's just a point of view. But I've spent my time leveling my monk. It's something that never really was the top of my priority list. I always had other things to do on my paladin, which is my main, all of my other melee classes. But I finally got around to leveling it. I've really enjoyed it, to be perfectly honest. I'm enjoying the cool abilities like Touch of Death and the flying kick. I always miss the mobs. I really need to get round to glyphing that, so I actually stop when I hit them, because most of the time fly straight over into the next pack, and it's an absolute nightmare. But I was playing him over in Draenor, and I've built some hammers for him. I made them on my main, who's a blacksmith, and these hammers are level 630, which is the item level that you get from heroic instances in Draenor, and then I've upgraded them once already to 645. Now I was out in Draenor, I think he's level 93, 94 at the moment, not particularly high, but he's having fun, and I realised that, I probably can upgrade these weapons again. I'd been saving some savage blood on one of my alts from the barn, and now I'd got enough metal and things to make the next essence, which is what you need. It upgrades it by 15 levels. So I logged onto my main and realised I didn't actually have enough metal, so I logged on all my alts and went through the mines. Now, one of the biggest failing in Draenor expansion in terms of garrisons, how much raw materials you've got. Now, I never enjoyed grinding materials, I won't lie, and initially I thought, this is fantastic, I've got it all in my garrison, and I can go and I just can pick up some metal every day and some herbs, and I won't have to go out and grind. But then it quickly accumulates, and especially if you've got 4 or 5 alts, and most people have at least 2 or 3 these days. It's not like back in the old days where you had 1 or 2 characters, because they're so much harder to get to the max level, and you just end up with a bank full of these reagents. So I logged all my alts, I got all the metal, and I logged back on my main, and then I remembered something, and I'd completely forgotten about this since last year when I was playing Draenor when it first came out, and I was having fun at the time, and that's archaeology. Now, archaeology's been out for quite a long time now, and most people just did it and forgot about it because they didn't particularly enjoy it, and I don't blame them. It was a profession that was meant to be voluntary. It was a bit like fishing in the old game, and Blizzard turned around and said, look, you don't have to do this if you want to. That's great. It's something to do, and it's going to be fun, and you're going to have some lore items in there. But if you don't, you're not going to be missing out on anything. And then they proceeded to throw some fantastic weapons and stuff in there. So most people spent all the time running around digging holes in the ground to try and find these fragments to make these really cool weapons. But then it's gone back full circle, really, and you just get toys and things now and pets and nothing spectacular. There are odd weapons, but by the time you generally get them, you're far beyond them in item level and ability. You don't really need them. And I got a pristine item. Now, for those of you who might not do archaeology, again, I wouldn't blame you, or those that haven't done anything with pristine items, what happens is you get the item and you go and put it in a room in your garrison. And here is the room. It's not very spectacular, is it? I mean, what have we got here? We've got some calcified eyes in a jar on a table, and we've got some rocks, maybe, and some fire. I mean, essentially, that's a rock on a rock. It's a piece of fossil on a stone plinth. I mean, how is that interesting? This, to me, is totally underwhelming. I'm not even sure what this room is. Is it a trophy room? Is it my personal quarters? But as far as that goes, I'm vastly disappointed in Blizzard's effort. But apart from that, it actually got me thinking. And it got me thinking about some of the older content of the game. And I went back and I looked at Scarlet Monastery on one of my alts, my hunter. Now, Scarlet Monster's been around since vanilla, and okay, it went through some changes in the last few expansions. That's fine. But if you look at the instance as a whole, you look at things like architecture, it's fantastic. It's quite unique in the game, and it's got a real good feel about it. You go in there, you enjoy it, it's well thought out in my opinion, and it's fun. But much more than that, when you go into certain places, if you look at the video at the moment, you will notice that it's got these really cool features. In this hall, we've got all these little alcoves, and each one's got a statue of a Scarlet Commander or a Scarlet Hero who's died or gone missing in, I'm guessing, in the War for the Scourge, the Third War for Azeroth, because they're certainly not characters I've encountered, and I've read the books, I've read the backstory, I'm quite up on the lore, and these are generally quite obscure names, but they're all there, and that's fantastic. It's real attention to detail. And so where this led me in my train of thought was, if they can do this for 5-man instances, specifically old 5-man instances that's had a bit of a revamp, why did we get such a poor deal when it came to Garrisons in Draenor? And I refuse to believe it's just laziness. I personally think that we're going down the route that if everybody's a commander, if everybody's a general, it will make people feel more involved in the storyline, like they are a major player in the world. And in some ways, I suppose it tried to emulate that, and I certainly enjoyed the little cutscenes of when I'm first going through the portal and there's all the other NPCs that are fighting and dying, and I enjoyed building the garrison. I thought that were really good, and it's here you go, Commander, here's your garrison, here are the men under your control that you're going to take Draenor with. But then, when it developed, I never felt it continued that vein. I felt like an administration clerk. The followers would come to me, it's like, what quests have you got for me today? Oh, here, go and fight this mob, go and fight that mob, and here's your reward. You get some XP, I get some gold or garrison resources, and that makes us all happy. But in reality, I don't think it made anybody happy, because it was like a mobile phone game or a game that you get. So I went out and I had a chat to my friends. Now, I've played this game for a long time. I've got lots of friends on lots of different servers who do different things, and I've divide them into 3 groups, really. There's a 4th group. I don't know a tremendous amount of people in that group, and I'll get to that in due course. But the first of these groups, and probably the smallest of them, are the role players. Now, I did do a little bit of roleplay a long time ago. I don't anymore because I find it too time-consuming, and it takes me away from other things I enjoy, given my limited playing hours. But for people who do enjoy roleplay, the game is very good for that. And I had a chat to them. I said, guys, do you feel we need player housing? So no, Dante, I've never felt this. I think, if anything, it's going to tie us down. And the reasons they gave were very simple. It's just that if they'd ever gone anywhere, they never felt the need to player housing. If you're a paladin, you find shelter in a church or a monastery. If you're a warlock or a rogue, you find shelter in a basement of an inn. It could be a thieves guild or whatever warlocks do in basements of inn, I don't know. If you're a warrior, you could be a wandering mercenary and pass out in the sawdust and straw and spilt beer of an inn floor, and all the things like that. So it says, guys, that's brilliant, thank you. And I went on to the next group, and this is a group that's bigger than the our peers, definitely. It's not a tremendous amount that I do, but it's PvP. I do keep my toe in, but my focus isn't PvP. I says, guys, what do you think of player housing? They didn't care at all. And of course, in these groups, some people were excited. I'm not going to say that all our peers and all PvPers weren't excited about it or didn't care, but this is the vast majority of people I've spoke to. So I said, guys, do you find it? And they didn't care. They just wanted to hit the opposition. I play mainly Alliance. All they cared about were hitting the Horde or vice versa. They didn't care where they were hitting the Horde, as long as they were hitting them somewhere and getting them Valor points and the Honour points and all the things like that you get from doing the high-end PvP. So great. And then the last group, and this is a group I really belong to, is the PvEers, the guys who do the raids and the 5-mans and stuff like that. And I didn't really need to speak to these guys because I knew what the answer was. But I had a chat to them, and their answers were exactly the same. Is all they want to do is get the loot, get the progression, and continue with the game. And they didn't want to be tied down to an area, or if they did, it wanted to be smack bang in the middle of all the instances and everything like that. All they cared about was the progression. Not all they cared about, but the primary driving force. And then the 4th group is the really, really casual players. Now, I don't like to use the term casual because a lot of people see it as discriminatory, as, I don't play the game as much as you, I don't play the game as intensely as you, and therefore you're picking on me. It's not the case, but some people just log on for 1 or 2 hours a week, maybe do a 5-man, mess around in the garrison, go and do a bit of grinding and log off again. That's absolutely fine. It's their choice. And I spoke to them, and most of them were excited about it, I won't lie. But they were for very passive reasons. It just kind of balanced their game out a little bit by getting things like metal and herbs that we've seen in Draenor. They were able to enjoy their few hours on the game a little bit more rather than going out and grinding. But in terms of housing, they weren't that excited, or a player base. It was more the fact that it was less time consuming to do the mundane administrative tasks of the game. So the 3-4 major groups in WoW, everybody I've spoke to wasn't particularly interested about it. We got it anyway, and they quickly let us down with it. And this is really where this video is going, is what they should have done with it, and why was it such a disappointment. Now, if you've been watching this video as well as listening to the commentary, you'll realise for the last few minutes I've been flying around my garrison, having a look at all the buildings. Now, this is an alt, and that's why it's got things like stable buildings, because there's no point having it on a main. The stables, you get the mount, and it's a passive bonus that nobody really uses. And there's all this wasted space. I mean, look at the gaps. They've just got nothing in it. There's a druid tree. You go underneath. There's all these druids that sat around there having a talk, having something to eat. And this is a fantastic piece of scenery, but it does nothing. You come outside, there's a farm. It does absolutely nothing. Now, I don't know if people actually know, but there is a farm in Draenor that is there to feed your garrison. And here it is. It's in Shadowmoon Valley for the Alliance. I'm not sure about Horde. I've got Horde characters, but I didn't go looking for it, and I can't remember off the top of my head. This is this lovely feature. I mean, it's absolutely fantastic. You've got all these different plants growing here. You've got some pumpkins, you've got some corn and some wheat. You've got some fruit trees and things like that. And you can have a fly around. You've got farmers walking up and down there. But even though I knew it was there, it took me a few minutes to find it. And most people will have done the quest there, if you do questing, and then just gone on to the next zone and completely forgotten about it. And it begs the question, why is that there? I mean, don't get me wrong, it looks lovely, but the amount of time you're going to spend in that once you've actually got by that zone is nothing. It's non-existent. I only went there today to take this footage. So why was it put there? Why was it put directly outside your garrison? Why wasn't it put somewhere where you can see it on a daily basis, and even if it doesn't give you quests, which I personally think it should do, or at least something to entertain you, it's there. It feels more inclusive and immersive, and that's what's important, is the immersion. How much time you have to invest in WoW. It's not as much as it used to be, but you've got to have that level of immersion as a reward, otherwise it does just become administrative tasks. And if you already thought that, well, that one was already in Draenor and we didn't want to change how it looks, here's one in the Eastern Plaguelands. Or the Western Plaguelands, sorry. Here's another one. You know, you got your pumpkins, you got your corn again. It's a very human farm, this one, but that's fine. Pop that in your garrison. You know, you can literally pick this up and drop it in terms of graphic models, and you've got a farm. But the real thing for me, the real deal breaker, was the lacklustre way garrisons were implemented. Again, if you look at the footage, this is a lights up chapel. This is in the Eastern Plaguelands, this one. But look at all the activity. You've got patrols going round on griffins or hippogriffs. You've got guys working to fix this wall that's been broken down. You've got all your quest givers, as is normal in any quest hub these days. And then I'm going to go outside in a minute, and again, you'll see a patrol. But more than that, much more than just the actual individuals, you get the feeling this garrison is, or this place is, somewhat under siege, because when you go outside you'll see mobs straight away, enemy mobs waiting for you. You will see wooden spikes pushing into the floor to break up attack formations. Of course they don't do that in the game because that's not a mechanic, but what it represents, and this feels so much more alive and so much more important than your garrison in Draenor, which it doesn't feel like a military encampment. It doesn't feel like a garrison. It feels like a folly. Your character has had too much gold and he's gone and built himself a castle and he's using it to entertain himself. It's his own pleasure palace that he's using to do God knows what on a weekend. It doesn't feel in any way inclusive. Now the next clip is going to show you something I took from Shadowfang Keep earlier today, and this really comes into the idea of buildings like barracks and engineering works and things like that, all of which again are very, very lacklustre. When your garrison comes under attack, first of all, everybody shouldn't run and hide in the lighthouse. That's an absolutely terrible feature. What should happen is your non-combatants should hide, and buildings like the barracks should give you a bonus. It should give you a benefit, and the enemy should have to fight through these people, these soldiers that you are in command of, and your garrison buildings. There's actually already a feature in the game for that. It was back in Cataclysm, in the Southern Lands, in Kalimdor. I can't remember the name off the top of my head, and it was a mini strategy game. It wasn't particularly complex, it wasn't particularly difficult, but it was a nice little feature. Why couldn't they adapt on that implement it, and there you go, straight away. When the Iron Horde attacks your garrison, or whoever it is, it doesn't necessarily have to be the Iron Horde. First of all, your cannons fire or your catapults, and you can do a little bit of strategy, and you bloody them. That's what it is to be under siege. It's a hard thing to take a castle, and that's the benefit of having these big stone walls and towers. And the higher level your barracks is, the more it should offer that benefit. At level 1, maybe, because at the moment all it does is give access to patrol missiles, which is completely pointless, really, for most characters. It should offer you a choice of soldiers, so if you are something quite squishy, like a mage, you choose dwarven warriors, and when you're under attack, they march out in formation with their shields and their plate armour and their axes, and they're ready to fight. And if you are a heavy melee character, like a paladin, maybe choose something ranged, so you get some elven archers on the towers, and you've got some dwarven sharpshooters in there, hiding behind rocks and things, picking off the enemy as they approach. And as you level that barracks up, you get more and more things, and this is why I chose the footage of Shadowfang Keep, because as you fight through Shadowfang these days, there is a squadron of Worgen rogues who come along with you. Now, they don't get involved in the fighting, they're completely NPCs, they don't do anything, but they look so cool, because every time you kill a boss, they come from the ceiling, or at one point they run across the rooftops, and that's scary. You watch half a dozen Worgen rogues run across rooftops, and it is quite intimidating from a game point of view, of course. But what would be wrong with having a level 5 barracks where these Worgen rogues suddenly appear when you press a button and they run across your garrison, they're jumping from rooftop to rooftop, leaping in massive bounds, and then they land on the Iron Horde that have managed to breach your defences? Because they would have to, even if it was somebody had to appear riding an Iron Star down the path into that portcullis, breaking it open, and they all flood through. And you could use these as your counter, your sally forth, and they leap on and they're ripping them to pieces and eating them, and it'd be fantastic. It'd be really cool and fun to watch. And that's the point, is that garrison invasions weren't fun, they weren't entertaining, and they quickly petered out, and that's why people don't do them anymore. It's not just because of the lacklustre rewards, which is a key, of course, but it's also the fact that nobody wanted to do them in the first place because they were so boring. But adding this new element would make them interesting, or would have made them interesting. And this can be expanded for so many things. Looking back at things like the Trophy Hall, or the very, very dull Trophy Hall, if it had been a guild-based Garrison Hall, like we're going to have class halls in the next expansion, Legion, it's looking really good at the moment, I'm very excited about that. But if it had been in guild, when your guild downed a boss, you could have got part of that boss as a trophy. When you kill Blackhand, maybe you could have had his mace broken on display, or when you kill Kargath, his blade fist, blunted or the tip snapped off, and maybe even statues. Maybe if somebody did exceptionally well, your guild could vote, and just a generic statue, of course, not one individual for that character, but one for a warrior or one for a rogue, and you could put them all up and down the guild hall, and that'd be fantastic because people love stuff like that. It's not just me who wants these things, and okay, they wouldn't really improve your game that much. But when you log on as a guild, you could have tasks to do, maybe to improve your barracks and things like that on a guild level, which would make it much more interesting than you doing it on your own. Because nobody wants to do things on their own most of the time on MMOs. There's plenty of single-player games out there. And of course, sometimes you do want to just log on for an hour and do something. But most of the time, you want to do something interactive or something worthwhile. And by giving a guild an opportunity to do something worthwhile, more people play it, more people feel involved in the game, and more people feel immersed in the game. And this could be expanded so wide. I mean, the engineering works are really, really poor building in my opinion. But if you all did quests for it every week, and you all added things to it like metal and herbs, and maybe you have to go and get some oil, or back in like vanilla you had to go and get the Rumsey Rum Lager from the pirates to fuel some of your goblin machines. You had to do things like that, and then you could use them items in 5-mans or raids. That'd be really cool, and people would go and do it. And there's no point saying, oh, well, that's unfair because people who play a lot or guilds who play a lot have got an unfair advantage in 5-mans or raids above me. Well, that's the case anyway. Guilds who play a lot tend to be organised. They tend to offer things like free enchant, free gems, etc. They've got a very organised raid team who all know what they're doing, and they've already got an advantage over you if you don't do that. So I need something in-game like that. I don't think it's going to give them a tremendous more advantage. It might actually help you because that little bit of DPS from accessing a nuclear launch that you can use once per raid on an hour cooldown, or them grenades that you can only use in 5-mans, that actually might help you catch up because it's unlikely the really good guilds actually need them anyway. On top of that, though, as well, just the lack of activity in your garrison. Oh my god, is it dull? Your people go out when you send them out and nothing happens. Your pack mules stand still all the time. If you look at Ashran now, Ashran's already more interesting because I've got soldiers running off to do battle. The NPCs, they're not even saying anything, but that's more activity than I get in my garrison in a month. These people just stood shooting at targets. Why couldn't that, again, be implemented back in my garrison on a larger level? I'd like to see it across the board, not just one person doing one thing randomly. It doesn't feel like there's any organisation. Like I say, less of a military compound to conquer Draenor, more of a rich man's fight. And finally, the lack of a capital city was crippling. Garrisons did not replace that. All garrisons were prisons for characters. They killed an already diminishing social side of the game. Look at Darnassus. It's beautiful, it's sprawling, it's fantastic. All these buildings do all these things. And while I agree that garrisons shouldn't have been like that, they should have been a capital city, not the very, very weak offering that we got in Ashran. Look at me when I go to Stormwind. I'm like a tourist. I get my selfie cam out. I'm like, ooh, all of heroes. Ooh, a general. Ooh, I'm going to take a selfie with the really grumpy looking king. He doesn't look very happy about that, but I do it because it's things like that is fun, and I want to feel involved in the game. The first time I walked down the Hall of Heroes, I was in awe of these characters, these stone statues, these legends. You don't feel any of that in Draenor. You don't even feel that the architecture is special because it's just so samey. Stormwind's got its own architecture. It's got white stone and blue roofs. That's how it does. That's what your garrison gets on Alliance. Why, if you play Worgen, do you not get something like Gilneas? Because Gilneas is fantastic looking, and there's already buildings there. You can see now that's a photo of a Gilneas settlement. Okay, it's damaged somewhat, and parts of it are burnt down, but it looks brilliant. Couldn't you just put that in for Worgen characters? Same with dwarves, same with elves. Just change some of the structure. Even the undead. I love the Forsaken place. I mean, that looks fantastic. That's Brill outside of Undercity. You could just lift some of that ideas up and drop them into Draenor, into the encampment, and you do get it with some buildings like the Horde Alchemist. That's very Forsaken-like. But nothing on the larger scale where all your garrisons should be like that. The closest you get is getting to choose the guards, and that is really, really weak. Well, thank you very much for listening. This has been quite a long video, especially to start off with. I know that it's been quite random and ranty, and there are a lot more ideas that I do want to speak about in greater detail, but I will organise them into a little bit more structure. It's not going to be about garrisons, it is going to be about Draenor as an expansion as a whole, because I think we all can agree it has been quite weak. It's been very disappointing from what we were promised and how people were talking about it, especially after the mixed bag that was Pandaria. Saw a big drop in subscription numbers. A lot of my friends stopped playing and came back for Draenor, excited about this possibility of going and revisiting a place established in lore, all these cool characters, and what we got wasn't that. So there are going to be more videos to follow, I do promise that. The order they come in and the speed they come in over the Christmas holidays, I can't promise on, but I am hoping to get one out in the next 2 to 3 days. So thank you again for listening, and I will speak to you soon. Bye bye.